Thank you, and thank you very much. So welcome to my professorial inaugural lecture. Does that feel good to say that? I'm going to talk to you tonight about research, about my research, and why I believe food security, integrity, and trust is critical in our food supply chains. When I see a student or a young academic for the first time, I will say to them, "What is your positionality?" And they go, "Oh my God, what's she talking about?" Research is important to many of the academics in this room, but the way they engage with research can be quite different. There's one type of research where you are the observer. You design a piece of research, you implement it, you gather some data, you analyze it, you look at the results, and you observe it. So you could do a new, plant some new seeds or do a new seed rate and say, how does that affect the yield? You could put some new materials into an animal feed and say, do they have the same feed conversion rate? That's interesting, but it doesn't really light my inner flame. I am interested in research where you cannot separate me and my research. I am my research is me. And that is my positionality. And what have I chosen to be my area of research? Food. Now you can tell from me that I do quite like food. I eat it at every opportunity. But when I think of my positionality, I am a wife, I am a mother, I'm a daughter, I am a sister, I am an aunt, I'm a great aunt, and I am in multiple communities. And many of you are here today and have supported me on my journey to actually be standing here. And the challenge is I cannot be separated from my research. It drives me, it empowers me, it enables me to think about the world. Now, I come from a technical background and I was a technologist in the food supply chain. So when you look at these pictures behind you and we think about how we describe food, farmers, food manufacturers, retailers describe food in different ways, but within the supply chain, we define it by a specification. We define intrinsic and extrinsic attributes. So if I was in food service, it matters to me how many ice cubes are in that glass of Coca-Cola. It matters to me the average number of sesame seeds on that bun. It also matters to me how the size of those chips, so that when they are cooked fast, they are all cooked to the same standard. But we also have to think about extrinsic aspects of food. And this ties in with what David was saying. Intrinsic attributes are about the shape, the color, the flavor, the nutritional ingredients of that food, the type of preservatives. But increasingly in the food supply chain, we are thinking about extrinsic attributes. How that food has been produced, how the animals have lived their lives, if we have spiritual or religious values that are attributed to our food, if we care about the workers and the conditions they live in and the environmental impact. So very often in supply chains, we define all of this with a specification. So I could look at this cup of coffee, I could look at these coffee beans from a very technical viewpoint. I could say, how have those coffee beans been dry roasted? How many shots does someone have in their cup of coffee? What kind of milk do they have? Even how do I do the design on the top? And in the food supply chain, we can get very engrossed in this. But on the occasions that I go to a coffee shop with my sister, none of that matters, because it's about how I feel. It's about the emotion. It's about the effect of being together in a coffee shop, how that affects on us. And that's the disconnect. Because very often in the food supply chain, we get so fixated on standards and specifications, we forget that food holds society together. The food that we eat, the food that we consume, how we engage with people impacts on our acceptance of food. So I've picked a very polarized picture behind me for a reason. Now my technical hat says, is all that meat the same size? Because if it's going to go into a ready meal, if it's not all the same size and I give the wrong cooking instructions, I'm going to kill someone. So from a specification viewpoint, that's what I'm thinking about. However, increasingly, buying food, consuming food has been seen to be a political act. And people are being encouraged to believe, whether that is true or not, that their purchasing decisions will make a difference on this planet. So that everybody changes to a certain type of diet, a certain type of behaviour, they can make a difference. That's not about specifications, that's about emotions, and that's about how we believe we are making an impact on society. So what is supply chain security? I've chosen a picture of a farm in Herefordshire on purpose. Because if a farmer looks at this picture, and there are many farmers in this room, I can see them screwing up their eyes to look at this picture going, oh, what's going to be the yield on that then? How far is it from being harvested? But supply chain security is far more than that. Different actors will be looking at this and going, is food security about calories? Because we've got more than enough calories on this planet right now to feed everyone. Or is it about nutrition? Is it about people being able to access regularly on an ongoing basis food that is affordable and nutritious? And what's the difference between security and integrity? My family are all now looking at their calves. So the question then becomes, they will know the names of some of those calves. I'm not going to ask them what they are. So what is it about supply chain integrity? In 2013, Joe was saying this is a new field of science. In 2013, nobody talked about food integrity. That's what's exciting about research. It's brand new. I will never climb Everest. I will never run, well I might, but I'd have to put a lot of effort into it. I will never run 5 kilometers, but I can move science that far. But there's lots of people in the room thinking, I'd like to see that one. So what is supply chain integrity? And the challenge we have is, as David was saying, it's complex. So very often we turn it into binary to try and communicate to consumers. This production's good, this production's bad. This production is what you need to think about if you want to change the planet. I argue it's far more complex. What is the impact of cows being outside 100 days or 150 or not at all? And as a consumer, how do I even begin to understand the integrity of what is being communicated to me? After the horse meat incident, and I couldn't speak without talking about the horse meat incident, Professor Chris Elliott, in his review for the government, sought to define food integrity, and it's one of the first definitions. And that definition talks about the intrinsic aspects of food, nature, substance, quality, safety, and extrinsic aspects as well, which I outlined. So it includes all those technical things that we talk about in the supply chain, but then he went on and he said integrity is not only about the way it's sourced and procured and distributed, it's about being honest. And that's the real challenge in our food supply chains. How do we define what being honest is? And we've got a whole module in our masters that's going to talk about this. because each supply chain is unique. If I think of dairy, what's important in terms of supply chain integrity in the dairy supply chain will be different to milling wheat, will be different to broiler chickens, and so it's very hard to articulate it. It's complicated. But I tried. And as you can see, this paper was published in 2016 along with a whole raft of others, because we need to really think about what food integrity is. Now, I tried to divide it into 4 categories, and I'm going to explore those now. Product integrity. Thank you, 3 Counties Agricultural Society, for having a display I could photograph. Is the food what we say it is? Are we being honest? Is how the food has been produced what we say it is? And very often for consumers, the only way they can interact with that is the banners that are in retailers and the logos. How honest are we actually being? Can a consumer tell that at the point of purchase? And then I added 2 more. Data integrity. Is the data meaningful? Is the data correct? Now, we've thought about data since 1990 with the Food Safety Act in terms of traceability. If I've made a mistake, have I got enough information on the product to be able to get it back and not kill anyone? But over time and increasingly, especially as we seek to drive productivity, we are gathering more and more data. What data is important? How do we know people are being honest with the data they are giving us? And that's where we come to people. Many of our consumers are faceless to people at all parts of the chain. Many consumers are trusting the people that operate in the food supply chain. And this is one of the first questions that I really wrestle with and write about an awful lot. Can organisations have integrity? Is it the organisation that has integrity and honesty and morals, or is it the people that work for it? How does that then impact on brand value? Because many businesses, their balance sheets, their intangible assets, the how much am I worth asset, is their brand. But on the consumers, what are they trusting? The business or the people that work for it? And then we come to the challenge, especially under austerity, of people not being honest. Now, when I took this photo in a street market in Vienna, I'm sure the man did not have any idea what I was doing, but I thought, fantastic. This is a really important photo because it sums up my research. I drink tea. I like rose tea. I could have bought this from the street vendor in Vienna. But how do I, as a consumer, know what those roses were sprayed with? Probably come from Morocco. That's where most of them come from. How do I know what they were sprayed with? How do I know what the residues are? How do I know the pollution that was caused if I say, please, can I have some rose tea? At the back, you can see Indian saffron. Saffron is one of the most expensive spices in the world. Thank you, street vendor, for putting it all in one photo. It's one of the most important spices in the world, readily substituted. If I said, can I have 2 scoops of that saffron, please? How do I know if it's saffron? As a consumer, I have no idea. And when we look at all those coloured spices, how can I test the integrity of the product? How do I know that they don't contain Sudan 1, a carcinogenic colour, which is found in many adulterated herbs and spices? And you have to remember, it cost Premier Foods £100 million, or their insurers, when they had a recall for Sudan 1. So how can I, as a consumer, identify the integrity of those products? It's very difficult. And does our supply chain itself drive bad behaviour? Now, I fell in love with the fraud triangle. There's also a fraud diamond, but time does not allow me to talk about both of them. But if you were a group of students, you'd have to have it. So, horse meat. Let's think about rationalisation. In 2013, in France, horse meat was substituted for beef. In France, they eat horse. So the rationalisation in someone's mind, I've got a ton of ground beef, I've got a ton of ground horse meat, let's mix them together. Is that rationalisation different to a business in the UK where we go, horses are pets? How can we be clear on our global food supply chains if there is a rationalisation in one country because of their culture, which when that food is then moved around the world becomes abhorrent somewhere else? And where does this food actually end up? Now, I would hope if I had a horse steak, someone can test me later, if I had a horse steak and Hereford marbled beef, I could tell the difference. I would hope I could do that. But and I'm going to ask the equine lecturers that are here later if they could do the same. But if it's ground up and in a lasagna or a spaghetti bolognese, could I really tell the difference? And that's the opportunity. As food, there's a drive for cheaper food. As people move away, especially those on low incomes, from carcass meat to composite foods, does that create more opportunity for fraud? And there's also that motivation. Businesses are being driven, I'm going to talk about the pressures in a minute, are being driven to keep the costs low whilst increasing supply chain standards. So are they motivated to behave badly? Here are just 3 examples. I could give hundreds. In the European Union, 100% grated Parmesan cheese must be 100% grated Parmesan cheese. You may say, well, that's what I would expect. If it says grated hard cheese, it's not Parmesan. Now, why would we buy grated Parmesan cheese? Because we like convenience, because we live busy lives. But does that then make us more vulnerable? In America, there was a big scandal in 2016 because it said 100% grated Parmesan cheese on the front of the packaging, and on the back, when you looked at the ingredients list, it said 10% added cellulose as a caking agent, i.e. to stop the cheese sticking together. What's cellulose? Wood. So suddenly consumers go, you mean that when I give my children pizza and put that container on the table and they sprinkle it on, they're sprinkling 10% wood? Absolutely. Does that matter? Well, hopefully it's safe to eat. It's small enough, it's not going to choke you. But is that honesty? Is that behaving with integrity? It's reducing the price of the product, but do consumers really understand? And the meat supply chain, even after horse meat, we still see a significant number of problems. And sadly, the meat that you purchase most frequently in takeaways that is likely to be substituted is lamb. Now, in takeaways, it's very rare you eat shoulder or leg of lamb. You are eating kebabs, you are eating curry. Could everyone in this room say that if they were having goat curry or lamb curry, they could, and they'd had a few drinks before they ate it, could they say that they could tell the difference? It's good to do a student poll on that one, or a kebab. But when the Food Standards Agency tested last year, more than 1/5 of the meat products they tested, mince, kebabs, pies, was not what it specified on the label. And that's just one survey. So, what are the drivers of illicit behaviour in food supply chains? Well, there's lots of them. And a lot of my research starts to look at these, and I'm doing research with colleagues in Brazil, Poland, right across Europe and in the UK as well, to say, well, what are the drivers of this bad behaviour? Why have I chosen pasta? Because if the standard says you can have 90% durum wheat in your specification and 10% other wheat, how much wheat of other is a farmer going to put in the trailer? Some of them will have 100% durum wheat, but might some of them have 9.9999%? Depends on the price of the other wheat. So even our specifications can drive some of this illicit behaviour. We have supply chain pressure, we have power. These are all the things we're going to explore on our new master's courses. We have market competition, swamping of data. And we have the whole issue that power is data and information. So some businesses have it in the supply chain and they don't necessarily want to share it with others. And we have ambiguity. How do we develop transparency in our supply chain? So what is integrity? How do we define it? Well, product integrity, since, as I was saying, this is a very new area of science, which is why it is so exciting. So in 2014, there was very little product adulteration and testing research. We now have this being developed everywhere. As we were saying, that's the kind of science where you're the observer. There's also the other bit, where you are interacting with your research. Now, I've got a colleague that goes and follows criminals in supply chains. I don't want to get that close to that one, because some of them are mafias and some of them are not very nice people on a dark night if you were to meet them, because they're making a lot of money out of this kind of approach. But for me, integrity is about being honest. It's about saying this is how we produce food, good and bad. It's about saying to consumers, how are you going to come on this journey about food? Because your buying decisions are actually driving some of this behaviour. And we have very few independent voices who are communicating with consumers on this level. How do we build trust in our food supply chains? It takes a long time, and it takes an awful lot of engagement. It can be broken in one decision, and that's the real challenge when we think about integrity. All the effort could be gone instantly. So, positionality is really, really important. If you are passionate about your research, you will be able to communicate it to people. Now, some people might think, actually, sitting down and writing, as I've done probably over the last 3 years, 250,000 words on food integrity, food fraud and everything else might not be my cup of tea. But there's no definition of food smuggling, so why not be the first person? There's no definition of food trafficking. Oh my goodness, why not be the first person? And that's what makes science really, really exciting, and food counterfeiting and everything else. So you have to think about how you do research and how research energizes you, and how you talk about it to a range of people. Why am I so passionate about research? Well, there's two ladies behind me who fired me up about research. Without them, I would not be here, and two other people I'm going to talk about. The one on my left, Marie Curie. I cannot pronounce the Polish name, but the really exciting part is I've been asked to speak at the university in Lublin, where she came from, that's named after her. Isn't research and academia amazing? So I'll have to perfect her Polish maiden name by then. She inspired me when I was 5 years old. 5 years old, I said, I want to be a scientist. No one in my family had ever been a scientist that I know of. I've done a bit of ancestry and can't find one. Why did she inspire me? And my poor husband, I dragged him all around Paris. He had to go to Sorbonne. He had to go to the Pantheon where she's buried, because I said, I have to go. So bless him, thank you. So why did she fire me up? Because in the First World War, she took her research and she developed mobile X-ray units. And she said, I'm going to use my research to do good. And the estimates are she saved somewhere between 500,000, or her mobile X-ray units, 500,000 and 1 million lives. That's where you're embedded in your research. That's when you really make a difference. And look what she has done. Double Nobel Prize winner. What an inspiration. What we have to do in academia is get young people today to be inspired by people like that. The lady on the right, Rosalind Franklin. What did she discover? DNA and its structure. And now she's just beginning to get the credit that's worthy to her. So, women can do science. I learned that when I was 5 years old. We need to keep having that message. You need to look at the science you love to do, the research you love to do, but women can do it. And there's 2 other people I'd like to mention before I close. Thanks again to everyone in this room who has been with me every step of the journey, from being a lecturer to a senior lecturer to a reader and now a professor. The first person is my maternal grandfather, who taught me you never give up. No matter how many times you are knocked down, no matter how many times people tell you you cannot do something, that you get back up, you look them in the eye, and if you can't go through it, you find a way around it. And that is a lesson for all of us in life. And the other person is my maternal grandmother, who was the person when I was 5 years old who said, and bear in mind, she was forced to leave school at 14. She was it's my brother-in-law. It's okay. When she was 14 in the 1920s, she was forced to leave school because of the recession and the depression. She said to me, you can be a professor. And she said to me, you have to do this thing. So, without all of those people, I would not be here today. And she left me with one final message, which I think everybody who is facing going to university and being the first but not last member of their family to go to university should realise. She said to me, if you want to be an independent, strong woman who's in charge of her own destiny, get an education. And that's not just about women, that's about everyone in our society. And part of what we should do is make sure we encourage everyone to believe, whether they're 5 or 45, that this kind of learning and development is for them. Thank you very much.